Alan H. Dowd.
Tell us about the early days at Shelby American, what you did when you joined the company, and what it was like in that day. That was a very unique time, lots of things
Hectic.
going on. Tell us about when it
Well,
started. And
to start with, 1962, December, I retired out of the Coast Guard with a marine engineering degree and went to work for Shelby American in the next month, in January. A friend of mine got me a job at Shelby American. He was the vice president with Peterson Publishing Company. He's dead now. But anyway, I went to work as a mechanic in the race shop. Real green out of the Coast Guard. And from there I went to team manager and then service manager, and wrote the service manual on the Cobras and the Mustangs, and then took over as competition administrator. And from then on, I just ran all the racing for the rest of the period that we were doing it with Shelby American.
Very good. Tell us about, let's go through the different periods of growth in the company. Tell us about the first period with the first 260 cars, street cars, and then evolving into the SCCA USRC sports car program in the United States. Tell us about how the company ramped up in its work and engineering.
Well,
and
it was in its infancy in those days. In fact, I was one of the original 13 employees in the company, and we operated on a shoestring, and we just from hand to mouth actually, and not getting paid a lot. In fact, I think I started at $3 an hour, and but in those days, $3 an hour wasn't really too bad, you know. And we put the cars together and we went racing, and with pickup trucks and trailers that we built ourselves, and haul the cars all over the country, and finally got some Ford support and more support, and built better cars, and had better parts, and put a crew together that was outstanding. And from all over the world, we got good race mechanics from all over. In fact, I brought a couple of myself from New Zealand that I knew down there. And we just evolved into a well-run racing team. I don't have to say through good management too, but anyway, that's the way it worked, and it just grew leaps and bounds. And the more money we made and the more successes we had, the more the money poured in, and we could do more.
Right. Tell us about that first race at Riverside with Bill Krause, driving the first car, racing against Doug Hooper in a Corvette.
You know something, I really don't remember a lot
Okay.
about those first races, because
All right.
it was just,
Sure.
we'd run out there on the weekends and come back Sunday night and work all Sunday night rebuilding cars again for the
Right.
next week.
Right. Okay.
And
Well, what was it like in the very first period when all of a sudden the production cars started to come into the shop and you guys were actually selling production cars? How did the race car evolve out of the make a point how you were selling actual cars, and the cars arrived, you're putting the engines in, and tell us about how that evolved into the 289 race car.
well, on one side of the shop, when I got there, they were already building race cars, and we were building Coopers, and we were building Cobras, 289 Cobras, and half the shop at Princeton Drive was production shop, and there was about 8 cars lined up in the production stage of development, and then the other part of the shop, and the machine shop and the engine shop, was all race shop. And then finally we took over the whole place because we grew so big we needed the room, and they moved all the production across the street to another building that was rented over there, and that's where they started building the Mustangs over there also with the production Cobras.
How did the production work on the Cobras? You guys would get rolling chassis from AC, put the engines in. Tell us about the process of
Yeah,
finishing the
it
car.
was basically they'd come in as on just transport wheels, and the car had nothing in them except a rear end and the running gear and a body, and some of the instruments and upholstery and stuff like that. And basically what we did was put the engines in and do the other modifications, sway bars and things of that nature, and take them out and test them, and that was fun. and then take them home at night too. Everybody would take their car home at night just to test it, and then bring it back the next day because always something wrong with it had to be fixed. And then we'd sell them.
All right, okay. And then the race cars, how different were the race cars? Did the race cars come as rolling chassis, little built for racing, or tell us how the race cars
Pretty much
came?
stripped down. We'd take a production Cobra. They came in as production Cobra and just disassemble the whole thing and then rebuild it with all race parts and everything, heavier suspension, brakes and things of that nature. And of course, it got the good engines with the Webers on them and everything, you know.
Now, who was there working with you at the time, and who did what in the shop? How did that all
Phil
work?
Remington was the chief engineer, and he ran the race shop. In fact, he's the one that hired me up in Shelby's office that day. He looked at me, and I was sitting there in a suit, a tie, and he looked at me and said, "You ever work with your hands?" And I said, "Yeah, quite a bit." And he looked at Shelby and said, "Yeah, let's take him on." You know, so I got hired from Phil Remington, and we're still the best of friends right to this day.
Fantastic. Okay.
That was about 40 years ago.
Wow. Wow. Okay. And who else was a principal person at that time? Tell us about a young Pete Brock. How did he come into the organization? Where does he fit into the story?
Pete Brock was more or less of an artist. He worked in the art department, and he used to do brochures and everything like that. And he had a claim that he had a hand in designing the Corvette with General Motors. Anyway, Pete and I never got along too well.
Okay. All right. Let's see. What about Dave Friedman?
You want to be honest, don't you?
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
That's fine. Tell us about Dave Friedman. He seemed to have chronicled a lot of the candid things that went on.
Dave Friedman was a self-appointed photographer for Shelby American, and then he actually became the official photographer later on. But he took a lot of pictures, and he went to all the races, and he did a lot of good work.
Okay. Tell us about how you learned on the job. You went in with some specialized skills, and with being somebody who worked with sports cars, is my understanding.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us how your job was. Sounds like you were earning as you were learning, in some regard. How did that work, and how did your skills get sophisticated?
I had the basic skills and mechanical skills and things of that nature, and but my real bag was in management, and I always liked that, and when I got out of the race shop, I just started managing, and I liked it a lot better, you know.
Got it. Okay. And as the team grew, tell us about how your work got more involved in terms of if you were racing in the United States and then racing in Europe and moving teams around and people, and how did that function? Was it controlled chaos, or how did that all work?
Well, it wasn't controlled sometimes. Believe me, it was chaos a lot of times. The workload went up and up and up, and I was like in 1967, I spent 30 days at home, made 27 round trips to Europe, and so you can understand the workload we had, and we were on the move all the time, just doing all sorts of things that were necessary to maintain the teams and make everything a success.
Okay, those were real glory days. I mean, the success of the company and the team really grew by leaps and bounds. How did it feel emotionally to be part of an organization that was so immediately so successful, captured the imagination of the public in one so decisively in United States racing, and then going over over?
It was really interesting, and I think that everybody on the team really enjoyed it. It was a lot of hard work. Everybody thinks that, boy, what a glamorous life. Well, it wasn't really. I mean, it was work, and sometimes you went 72 hours without ever laying your head down to sleep. But everybody was really interested in making a success and being winners. That was the whole name of the game, be a winner. And we were.
How difficult was it to build a race car that would last? Obviously, all teams have teething pains in periods like that.
It was tough. It was really tough because the races got very competitive, and especially when we were told by Henry Ford that we'd better win over Ferrari, and then you really had your ass on the line.
Okay. Tell us about when Shelby realized that the Roadster would not win an FIA competition by virtue of its limitations on top speed, and the idea of knowing that you had to have a more aerodynamic body to win an FIA. Tell us about the evolution of the Cobra into the Daytona Coupe.
That was basically.
Could you paraphrase that and say the Daytona Coupe came from?
Well, it came from a production race car, and the basic running gear and engine and transmission and everything, but the body was different, and the chassis was modified also. But that concept was completed by Phil Remington and Ken Miles and Pete Brock. They all had a hand in it, and a whole group of mechanics that worked on it. But they were the three prime movers on that. Ken did the development, Pete did some body design, and Remington did the engineering.
Got it. How long did that process take, and how and what were the successes of it?
well, it was a success right off the bat. As soon as it was completed, the whole thing was put together probably in about 6 or 8 weeks. From wood buck for the body to the completed car.
Wow. And the viewers don't really know anything about the FIA GT Championship. Maybe make a point how the reason for the Daytona Coupe was to take on a larger world class of racing and not just SCCA or USRs.
Basically the Ferrari GTs, and that was our main competition. And because of the top speed that we didn't have with the Roadster, because of the aerodynamics, the Daytona Coupe was brought in to supplement those, and they were very successful.
Okay. How many cars were built, and where were the bodies actually built?
The bodies, the wooden buck was built. I can't remember where the wooden buck was built, but we had a panel beater downtown that formed the aluminum panels over the buck, and then they were brought in and completed at our shop,
Okay.
welded together, and all we had some wonderful metal workers. Bill Eaton and Ron Butler and people like that. They could do anything with metal. And Phil Remington also.
I saw some photos of a shop in Italy building Daytona Coupe bodies. What was that all about?
That was for that was for a body that we call the Royal Mail. It was that Pete Brock went over there, and he was going to build a new Cobra, a new coupe body, and it was never finished. It was brought over here, and it had a big scoop in the back, and everybody used to throw their trash in it and everything. It was we nicknamed it the Royal Mail, you know. And,
okay.
But it was never completed. The project never went through.
Okay. Walk us through a day at Shelby American in the busyness of building production cars with the race shop here and your job. Who was doing it? Just walk us through a day. You get there in the morning. What time did you arrive? What did you do? What was the shop doing? How did people interact? And at the end of the day, what was done? Go ahead.
Well, the work day was anywhere from 6 in the morning to midnight, and sometimes longer depending on what the project was and how much time we had to finish it. A lot of midnight oil burnt there. Everybody worked real hard. You know, you just kept working, and things got done, and very little time off, and it was 7 days a week. You know, at least 12 hours a day, never under a 12-hour workday. And then finally, when the race shop got big enough, well, the racing division moved away from the production division, which was across the street, and different sets of men.
Okay, great. How many people worked in the race shop, and how many cars did you guys build at a time? What was did you build them in batches, or how did that
We
work?
built race cars for customers, but primarily for our own teams. You know, there was a section where we had probably a half a dozen mechanics building nothing but race cars for customers, and then the other portion of the shop was all our own team cars, and we had 6 or 8 team cars under construction, or not construction, but you know, revamping all the time. They were built, but after every race they had to be torn down and completely rebuilt. And the engine shop was kind of working all the time. The dynos were running, you know, sometimes 24 hours a day checking engines.
When did the 427 engine come in? Why was that, and how did that evolve into the race car?
It was just an advancement, more power, and a new type of race car. I'm not quite sure. I think it probably came in around 64, 65, right around in there, developed around then. And because in 66, well, that's when we went with the Mark IIs and the Mark IVs to Le Mans, and they had all 427s in it.
What did you think when all of a sudden you guys found out you were going to be a major subcontractor to Ford for the GT40 program? Tell us about that. When did you first hear that? What did you think of that,
Well,
and how did that work?
We were always, I guess you might say, associated with Ford, and from the get-go, and their money was behind us, and they had Ford people out there supervising. Ray Geddes and Frank Norton came out, and then who eventually went to work for us, and but we were always with Ford, and it was we just considered it natural that we'd get that program, that's all. And we'd been working toward it all the time, and when they said they had to have race cars built for Le Mans, we built them.
Right. And what kind of a project was that? Was that difficult, or was that just a new plateau, or did you have the staff?
It was a whole new automobile, and it was all a new challenge. Everything is a new challenge in racing anyway, but it was a completely new challenge on a new automobile, and it was a lot of fun.
As manager, how difficult was it for you to work with an overseas racing effort, being in California, and with, you said you went back and forth. Tell us, what was the international racing dimension of your company like?
It was, we thought it was great. We had a liaison with Ford Motor Company, a direct liaison with Homer Perry, and he worked for John Cowley and Passanoff back there. But Homer was out in California all the time, assisting and helping us and directing us, and we were back in Detroit consulting with him and doing things that Ford was doing, like the wind tunnels and things of that nature. That we worked directly with Ford on a lot of projects.
Right. And what was Shelby's management style in terms of gathering a good group of people? Was he a micromanager, leave you alone, or what was he like? What was his style like, and how did he can contribute to the real functionality of the shop?
He had an awful lot of good people. That was one of Shelby's good points, that he knew that he could hire and acquire people to do the job, and then all he'd do is he'd leave you alone. He said, "Get the job done. Just do it," and we'd do it.
What did you learn out of that when it was all done and it was over? What were your thoughts? What did it result in for you?
I was disappointed.
Tell us about how it ended, when it ended, and emotionally how you felt.
In 1967, after the Le Mans race, the FIA changed the engine rules, and Ford didn't have an engine to compete in that class. They didn't feel like they wanted to spend the money to develop it. We'd already accomplished what they wanted to do, and that was win Le Mans overall, and we did it twice in a row. And they were very happy with that. Mr. Ford was pleased, and we were pleased. And then the racing contracts and the racing efforts and everything just sort of went away. We started a place called Shelby Racing Company. We moved out of the airport, the big facility, moved down to Gardena, and we had the Toyota program at that time, Toyota 2000s, and we did some Can-Am work, Can-Am car work, and we built a couple of customers' cars and things of that nature, but then there wasn't enough money to support the thing, and we shut it down.
And how did you feel when you look back on it? You look back on those glorious. Tell me your feelings.
Well, I was disappointed because we worked so hard all those years and everything, and we got an awful lot of good people, and the team disbanded. We couldn't keep them, and they went to other racing teams and filtered out throughout the world. And it would have been nice to have been able to continue on with good racing programs and keep the same crew we had. We could have been very successful.
What's your fondest memory when you look back at all that and you think about those years and all the relationships with people? What was the biggest part of it? Was it the people? Was it the success? Tell me about the biggest.
It was a
thing.
combination of all of them, really. I mean, you really enjoyed the people because our team was so congenial. And we seldom ever had any controversy within the team among themselves. Everybody worked hard, and they understood everybody. They all were talented folks, and they understood each other and what everybody could do, and they got along great. There wasn't any upset or anything like that.
What's your fondest memory of all of it?
Ah, boy. Gee, it's hard to say. I guess getting a week off once in a while.
Could you say that again? My fondest memory was getting, put it in those terms.
Well, probably just getting a week off after once in a while and go home and see the family and relax for a while,
Right.
Because you were going 24 hours a day.
Right. What did you learn from that big explosive years of experience there? What was the biggest thing you learned out of it?
A lot of better management, better manager than I was when I started, and acquiring skills, and that was the main learning. I acquired a lot of knowledge. That was the main thing, and I love knowledge.
What do you think was the biggest success? Was it that the cars won and the Americans took on Ferrari and beat them, or the American hot rodders go out and are successful? How would you define the success of Shelby American? What really was it?
It was a combination of wonderful people, a lot of hard work, and financial backing, obviously, and good management. And you can't define it one thing that made it a success. It was a combination of all of it.
Do you think that it all worked because everything was in the right place at the right time? I mean, there's different things that happen in motoring business.
No, you make it work. You don't take it by chance. And maybe it's going to be there. You make sure it's there.
Tell us about, what do you feel like when you walk up to an old FIA car and look at it, and you see it here today, 35 years later? Tell me that.
I quit getting emotional about pieces of machinery a long time ago. I don't feel anything about it. It's a great looking car. It's a nice piece of machinery. It did the job.
Right.
And a lot of fine people put it together.
Right.
But I don't get emotional about machinery and
Right.
things of that nature.
Was the Shelby company about machines or about people?
Well, it was about everything, you know. I mean, a lot of people, if it wasn't for the people, there wouldn't be any machines.